Welcome back to the Get Good Scrub podcast. It's your boy, Cool Guy Fonz, joined with our very own V, MarcTheCyborg.
V like V for Vendetta? Or?
I thought you would go that way, but V for like the guy from Cyberpunk.
Oh, okay. Man, yeah, that would have been the obvious one with the Cyberpunk update and everything here. I dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And
it shows you that wasn't ever, because I was about to say, I was like, he was genetically engineered. I wouldn't call V a cyborg though. I mean, unless you count the mask.
I guess. Have like you read the graphic novel?
I have, but I read it like around the time the movie came out and not since. So I have it over there.
Do they explain how he got powers, or you just kind of go
they're being like a lab that they're doing experiments on him, and then it burns down. And I'm pretty sure the shot of him like with no skin kind of burning in the rain, I think that is also in the graphic novel, but it's been so long since I've read it that I might be wrong, and there might be people in the comments right now being like, you haven't read it. I read it like 15 years ago. Okay, guys, calm down.
But no, I was referring to Cyberpunk, which we will be getting up into later. For now, let's talk about our new game releases and stuff we've been playing. So, Lost Ark seems to be a big hit, which it was originally released 3 years ago in Korea by Tripod Studios.
It's been around for a while.
Smilegate. But it just got re-released on February 11th to the Americas and Europe, published by Amazon Game. It became the second most played game on Steam in 24 hours. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's been around for actually 3 years, and just the added people from the Americas kind of just put it over the hump.
See, that's the thing. I don't know if the people in Korea have been playing it on Steam though. Like I'm not sure if they've been playing just like a direct loaded version. I guess I could look that up and we could put up a text a correction. But I'm under the impression that it was just a game that was huge in Korea because Smilegate is a big publisher in South Korea. And it's one of those things that there'd been a lot of hype around it. They just hadn't localized it yet. And this week, actually, it's the second game that Smilegate released, the other one being Crossfire X on Xbox Series. And I hear that's really bad, though I haven't got around to trying it. I will. I'll perhaps give it a shot, though, and maybe we'll throw up some footage of that. But it's like the one that Remedy did the campaign of. So Smilegate's a very, very profitable company. Like, they do very well, but they don't really have much of a presence in the West. So it's interesting to see that they've teamed up with Amazon, which is really interesting if a major Korean games publisher is entering the Western market with the biggest Western company backing them.
Yeah.
Like that's neat, because Amazon's kind of had some uneven luck with their game releases. New World did okay, but their previous one basically got pulled down. Crucible, I think it was called.
Back to Lost Ark, ARPG. It's got like this cool 2.5D like rendering. Like you're in a 3D environment, but you kind of move in a 2D aspect. What class did you choose?
I choose the martial artist. It it seemed kind of cool. No, the martial artist. It's actually called martial artist.
Oh, okay.
The assassin was probably the one that I might have gone with, but I don't know. Something kind of said like, I don't know if this is because I don't know what the stealth kind of skills and things are like in it. So I was like, do a beat 'em up class, and I sort of didn't want to do the standard warrior type class. So I was like, martial artist, that sounds cool. Also, maybe it's because I've been playing so much Sifu. I was like,
how many hours did you put into it?
In Lost Ark? Not many. Yeah. I really just kind of fired up the prologue 2 days ago, I guess. But I have 81 minutes. You know, when my Steam game time is being logged in minutes, not hours, that it's not very much.
It's not that good of a, yeah. No, I played about an hour of it as well. It seems pretty good. I can see why it got all the good reviews, and maybe not so much why it became the second most played game, but I guess we'll have to experience a lot more of it.
Well, my theory is Korean waifus is the reason, but the big controversy around Lost Ark, though, is whether it's pay to win, which I Haven't gone far enough into it that I could really tell you one way or the other. It just seemed like, kind of a flashy but fun and like well playing Diablo style game, like an ARPG.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I don't know. We might fiddle around with it a bit after we record this. So
way better.
Maybe our
Path
thoughts will be out of date. Really, I
found like there was
Path of Exile.
a lot more production value than Path of Exile.
Well, it's also a much newer game. I think Path of Exile was made in like 2015, I think 2014. It's old. Yeah. It's like, I think it came out around the same time Destiny did. Speaking of which, I guess we'll talk about Destiny later.
And then on to the other game we've put way too many hours this week into, Sifu, developed by Slowclap. It was released on February 8th on PS4 and PS5, and on PC it was Epic Game Store.
Yeah. I'm upset at you for that, Slowclap. I'm very upset at you for that.
It's a third-person beat-em-up inspired by old kung fu, like Pai Mei or Bak Mei, depending on how you look at it. But pretty good reviews overall. How you finding it?
I love it. I think it's an absolutely incredible game. It was sent to me by a viewer. I don't know what's up with this copy that he sent me, but it's a file that I just extracted and didn't need to install the Epic Game Store, and I can somehow play. I didn't ask any questions, though, but I like it so much that I actually bought it on PS5, and I've beaten it on both PC and PS5, and honestly, I like it so much that the second it comes out on Steam, Slowclap, I'll buy it there, too. So, yeah, it's really, really good, and I was a little iffy on some of the aspects of the combat engine. Like, I found that defensively it seemed like your options were really limited, because it's like, well, the parry system works and it sort of plays like Sekiro in a way that you have what's called your opponent's structure, which is the same thing as the posture in Sekiro, where you can knock the person off balance and then you can basically do an execution on them. So you can add to their structure bar by parrying, but you can't parry like you did in Sekiro, where you can parry every single hit. Or like if you can, the timing's off on it. Like it doesn't seem like it's as responsive as it would need to be. And you're dodging, like not weaving, like you're dodging the way you would dodge in like a Dark Souls game. It doesn't move you far enough away from most strikes. But if you hold the left bumper button, or L1 if you're on PlayStation, and then press down on the analog stick, you hold L1 and you kind of go into a defensive stance. And then if you press down, then any high attack, you'll like weave like a boxer. Kind of like Fight Night Round 3, if you remember that game we used to play on Xbox. Yep. You remember you had to like actually weave from the punches, and like, because you weren't like dodging away or doing rolls in Fight Night. Like it's like you're boxing, right? You move out of the way of the punches, you slip, and that's kind of your primary method of defense. And the way it's got its roguelike elements too, where it's 5 levels, and I played the entire game on my stream last night. I guess that's dating the recording, in the Daredevil costume, in about 2 hours. And I did that because I've unlocked all the shortcuts. I've unlocked a whole bunch of the moves that you can permanently unlock. But most importantly, I understand how to play the game. I know how to beat the bosses, so you can move through it really fast, which is why this is a perfect example of a game that if there was an easy mode difficulty, everyone who bought it would feel ripped off. They'd be like, yo, this game's like 2 hours long. What the hell? Why did I pay $40 for this? $40 US, so it was $50 for us. And the answer to that is, well, this game being difficult and taking time to learn and focusing on, it's got kind of a permadeath system, but an interesting one, because the whole game takes place over the span of 1 day, but your fail state, like your death, is dying of old age or being too old to continue fighting. And the reason for that is you have this kind of magic charm that every time you die, you can basically utilize some of what your remaining lifespan would have been to bring yourself back to life. So when you get killed once, you can decide to get back up, and that adds 1 year to your life. So you start the game at age 20, and if you get killed once, you become age 21. But then you get 1 on your death counter. So consecutive deaths without clearing them by either fighting elite enemies or spending money at one of the shrines, it gets exponential. So your next death, you lose 2 years. So the second death, you'd be 23. If you die again, you'd be 26. Die again after that, you'd be 30. And once you hit above 70, that's your last chance. Like if you get knocked out at 70, you're out of it totally, and you have to restart at least the stage that you were last on. The thing is, every stage gives you a checkpoint where you have the same amount of upgrades that you had when you got there and your current age. So I've gotten it so that I have a checkpoint for level 2 at age 20. So no death. I've been able to no death the first stage. Stage 3 and 4, I have age 21. And stage 5, I have age 22, but that's because I kind of choked on stage 4 when I was doing that run in just a stupid fight. But now I can no death the boss, so it's just a matter of getting to the boss without dying. The thing is, though, like, you want to kind of grind and get yourself a better checkpoint, because the first time I finished the game, I was 66 years old. Second time I finished the game, I was 44 years old. Now I'm getting through the game, and I'm like 32. And there's an achievement, at least on PlayStation, a trophy, for beat the game under age 25. I don't know if I'm there yet, because I really have to learn how to fight the final boss without dying as much, because he tends to be where I lose the vast majority of my lives. But the thing is that, I guess my point about the difficulty is that element of challenge, and that, oh man, I want to go back in and get myself a better checkpoint. I got one where I finished level 2 and I'm 27. What if I can get it at 22? What if I can get it at 21? What if I can get to level 2 at 20? And it makes you want to just replay the same levels over and over again to put yourself in a better position for the rest of the game. If you remove the difficulty, then you kill all of that, man, I got to get better at this. Like, you kill all the motivation to actually play the game. And I think that it's interesting that a game with the same amount of content, you could structure it in a way where it feels more rewarding to play if you make it a challenge and have it be something that a player will want to dig into. And I at least found that for me, I really like digging into Sifu. Like, granted, Elden Ring is coming out next week, but Sifu is at least presently my game of the year.
Yeah, we definitely have to save some time for Elden Ring, but I haven't gone around to trying out Sifu, but I do love that dying mechanic. I read about it in one of the reviews. Like, it sounds pretty cool. Like you said, like, it's almost like permadeath. Just you have this much time to basically beat the game, but it's not time based on minutes and hours, but time based on your life. So yeah, it seems pretty cool. Next up, we had Dying Light, developed and published by Techland. Available on all platforms, but no crossplay, no Game Pass release either. But I've heard one of the reviews said it has up to 3,000 different parkour moves that you can
animations?
Do, like jumping off walls. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't played Dying Light 2, but the first one had a lot. Like, there was a lot of variety in the different animations that you would have and moves that you could pull off for the parkour. I would still say that as far as parkour games, or game that have a significant like emphasis on gymnastic traversal, you could say, because I know now anytime after that stupid Office episode you say the word parkour, everyone's like, parkour. It's like, oh my god, stop it, guys. That's just what that like sport is called. but anyways, I'd say that Titanfall 2 and Ghost Runner are sort of my favorites as far as like smoothness to play, but Dying Light feels a bit more realistic. Like, I mean, again, like, realistic when you're talking about a video game with zombies. Yeah, calm down. Like, what I mean is you have weight in Dying Light, and it feels like you should only be able to do things that seem possible for a person to do. Granted, a person who's very athletic. But I've always liked the way that Dying Light was designed. I never finished the original game, but I'm interested in Dying Light 2. I don't know, it kind of came at a bad time, for me at least. I mean, me personally. No, I think the release timing window is actually pretty good. It was a solid month before Horizon and Elden Ring, which are kind of the two big ones of this season, I suppose. But I don't know. I think like when it's on a Steam sale later in the year, if I've got a bit of a lull in like the summer, I might pick up Dying Light 2. I hear the role playing elements are really cool too. Like you have a lot of dialogue choices that apparently affect the game pretty greatly.
So yeah, supposedly like depending on which factions you help or not help, kind of block off different areas of the map to like for the rest of the game. So like you have to play through multiple times to like access every area in the game, because I assume the factions fight each other too, so you have to either choose a side. Definitely put on the docket of games we're gonna look forward to playing in the future, as well as this game, because I definitely don't have the time for it now. But Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West was released, developed by Guerrilla Games, published by Sony, obviously, released February 18th, so pretty recently. So far, so good for reviews, but I actually haven't even played Horizon Zero Dawn.
Zero Dawn?
Yeah, I got to play that one first, right?
I mean, actually, I hear that story-wise, that would be the move. That apparently the story for this one references things that happen in Zero Dawn as if you just played Zero Dawn, which, I mean, I think it's more or less that's fine. But at the same time, the reason I'm not playing Horizon Forbidden West right now, and the reason I'm probably just going to wait for the PC version whenever it comes, I'm assuming, like, Horizon Zero Dawn was the first big PlayStation game that was released on PC, so I can only imagine that now that they're releasing more games on PC, Forbidden West is probably coming to PC eventually, even if it is in, like, a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. But the main narrative hook of Horizon Zero Dawn, which I won't ruin, especially if you plan on playing it, because it's worthwhile and it's really cool actually when you find it out. But it's the mystery of why are humans cavemen again, and why are there robot dinosaurs? Like those are the two questions that basically have the same answer too. But that's the real mystery, because it's like it's very clear that this was our world. It was Earth as we know it. It's just really far in the future. Some stuff went down. There's robot dinosaurs, and we're cavemen again. Or like not cavemen necessarily, but we're like, you know, we're hunter-gatherer tribes essentially.
Tribal
like
people.
We've gone back to a tribal lifestyle, not an industrialized society. Yeah. So that is the big, that's the hook. That's the thing that makes you want to be like, oh man, I want to get to the next story mission because I'm going to learn a little bit more about what is the Zero Dawn project and what happened with all that. And when you find it out, it's really satisfying. And I think that Guerrilla did a great job of writing that. The thing is, I don't really care about any of the characters. I couldn't even name, like, it took me forever to remember Lance Reddick's name. Actually, speaking of Destiny, he's the guy who does the voices of Allah. Lance Reddick, like the guy from Lost. But anyways, it took me forever to even remember that his name was Silence. And he's like kind of one of the main characters in the game. I'm like, okay, yeah, Aloy's the main girl. I know that, but what's Lance Reddick's character? I'm like, the only people I remember in that game is Aloy and Lance Reddick. And I only remembered him as Lance Reddick because he's a good actor. And I'm just like, oh man, I realize I really don't kind of care about any character that's in the Horizon world. I just cared about the lore. And I got the answer that I was looking for in the lore. So because of that, and I mean, this is more of a personal preference thing, I really liked playing Horizon Zero Dawn with a keyboard and mouse. Like aiming that bow with a mouse was a significantly more pleasant experience than playing that game with a controller. And it because I didn't feel like I ever needed to use the kind of bullet time skill, whereas on PlayStation, and I have the platinum on PS4. I've played the hell out of Horizon twice. And it just felt like it felt more like a Monster Hunter game where like it was like when you're in one of these hunts, you have to really be on the ball, be very accurate. You have to make quick decisions. Whereas on PS4, it kind of seemed like I was throwing the game into slow motion so often that it was almost like a turn-based RPG. It's not, like it's still an action game, but I don't know, it was a bit of a different experience. So I think that combined with obviously being a week away from Elden Ring, I'm like, do I want to play a 50-hour open world game I know I'm going to put down on Friday next week. So I don't know. I kind of just decided to skip this one. But I mean, it looks good. It's getting good reviews. Apparently, it's got some glitches and stuff that aren't really typical of Sony first-party releases, but not having any first-hand experience with it, though, I don't really know. But
Yeah,
I hope it sells well, because...
Day one patch, too. So I don't think it fixed everything, but it was pretty a pretty big file.
Yeah. Well, it was strange, because, like, Guerrilla is... They're one of the big Sony first-party studios, and the person who founded Guerrilla, Herman Hultz, is now I think he's like the president of Sony International Studios. So like, he should be, if he is going to be looking out for any developer, he probably should be looking out for Guerrilla. And so if they released a game that had some technical issues, it must mean that I worry that they're deeply ingrained into it and that they're not going to be easy to fix. But at the same time, I mean, again, it might be a couple of years until I actually get around to play this game. So that's that. But as a contrast, like the other game that I'd recently played, God of War, as much as I think probably the gameplay in God of War is better, but also that story I'm invested in. So the second Ragnarok is out on PS5, I'm buying it and playing it because I want to know what happens. But in Horizon, I'm just like, if they never make another Horizon game, I'll be like, well, a Horizon game might be nice because, you know, the gameplay and that's fun. But if it's like, but you got to hear the rest of Aloy's story, I'm like, oh no, I think her story was actually tied up in a nice little bow there at the end. I don't really feel like I have any questions.
Speaking of day one patches or games being released broken, Cyberpunk 2077 was finally got a next gen upgrade. They had a huge announcement this week. They introduced 2 graphic modes for PS5 and Series X. They added some ray tracing. They added some cool features they've added even to the PC version was you can now buy apartments. Also added temporary buffs. If you take a shower, you get coffee, or you sleep, you'll get like a buff for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which was pretty cool. Improved gameplay overall, like combat AI makes more sense now. Crowd actually reacts to what you're doing instead of just... I remember when I played it very little, like if you pulled out a gun and shot somebody, people would just continue walking like nothing's happening. So there's more of that, more reactions from the crowd. The driving's a lot better. The throwing knife actually comes back to you instead of just disappearing into the ether. Like you can pick up your throwing knives. Maps and quests are much easier to look at and figure out which quest you're on. And they do sub-quests and main quests, different icons, which I can't believe they didn't do that in the original release. So you actually played 2077. That's another one on my docket to like start playing and finish if I ever get a chance to do it.
Yeah, I was famously referred to as the Cyberpunk shill over on the Geeks and Gamers side of things, but I don't know. I still think if you actually watch my review, I'm very honest about all of its problems, and I don't forgive them on anything, but also I don't just say, oh, CD Projekt lied, therefore bad. It's like, well, then the marketing team did get carried away, and what they did with their review embargoes. Like, I wouldn't have agreed to. So even though I was really looking forward to Cyberpunk, if they said to me, hey, MarcTheCyborg, we want you to do an early review of Cyberpunk, but you can only use our footage, I'd immediately be like, nope. I'd be like, no, I'm not using your footage. I'm going to use my own footage. And they'd be like, okay, then you can't get the game early. I'll be like, well, see you on December 12th or whatever it came out. But I think that what's happening now, I think is a good thing for the game. I think that fixing a whole bunch of the problems and getting a stable console version out there will do nothing but help. The damage might already be done as far as CD Projekt's reputation goes, but I'm of the mind that just like, actually, I think No Man's Sky even got an announcement for more DLC, and Sean Murray, who's like the No Man's Sky guy, said that apparently No Man's Sky is nowhere close to being done. So there's your big redemption story of like Hello Games was a pariah company for a solid 6 months or so, maybe even a year. And they kind of went quiet, and then they worked on their game, and they fixed it. Now, I've seen a lot of people, even with the Cyberpunk thing, with a lot of issues being fixed, and apparently the game, at least on consoles, being quite good now, at least from what I'm reading. I actually do have it on Xbox. I probably should fire it up. But I think that allowing a company to have a redemption and not just be like, oh, well, where's their DLC? Like, I thought the DLC was supposed to be done by now. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, they were fixing the game. Like, would you really want them to rush out the DLC? And people I've seen say, be like, yeah, well, I mean, the DLC should be done now, so they lied again. It's like, yeah, but, I mean, no, I think the best bet is to kind of... At a certain point, you got to just kind of unplug and not be chomping at the bit to play Cyberpunk immediately and just be like, okay, you guys fucked up. Go away and fix it. And hopefully when you come back, it'll actually be fixed. And I think that now, at least from what I've heard, I only fiddled around with it a bit, and what I noticed is that I think the biggest thing I noticed, granted I played for like 20 minutes, I didn't really get much time into it, is that the mini map for driving is a lot better. I think the car physics are not really that much better, and I was hoping that they would be because I heard that they kind of redesigned them. But overall, I think the big positive reception has been coming from the console end of things. That's like, oh yeah, no, like the Xbox Series and PS5 versions are actually really good now. And, you know, I'm happy for them. I still think that CD Projekt probably has some work to do for, really gaining their reputation back. But the funniest thing I saw too was a bunch of people were like, hey, so like this PSN PlayStation upgrade, is this $10 like it is with Ghost of Tsushima and Horizon and all those games? And all these people were like, I don't think so, but it might be. And I'm like, no, guys, it's not. Like CD Projekt, as much as everyone hated them for a good chunk of time, a lot of the things they do on the consumer practices side are some of the best things in the industry. Like they're all about being like, yeah, no, it's fine. Have a free upgrade. Do this. Get this for free. Have the Blood and Wine DLC that's $20 and it's as long as most games for Witcher 3. So I don't know. I hope CD Projekt keeps coming back and doing stuff like that because I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them as like the underdog story.
Yeah, you brought it up. Like No Man's Sky came back from like a disastrous launch. Even Destiny came back from a disastrous launch and bad DLC until they came out with Taken King, right? So there was a good game at launch. Just you needed a high-end PC, which you have to play it, right? So like you said, like you played Cyberpunk when it first launched. It was a decent enough game, probably not the game we were all expecting, but it wasn't a horrible game.
And not without
at
its
launch.
problems either.
Yeah.
But like...
So I think after a little bit of time, it'll definitely be the game. Maybe it'll never be the game we envisioned, but, you know, a game worth playing. Like I said, looking forward to eventually getting to that.
I think it is still half price on Steam right now.
Oh, I have it. I had it at launch. I just never had a chance to play it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of made the right choice of just like, oh, well, if this game doesn't look like it's in great shape, I'll work on my backlog and play it when they fix it. So, but yeah.
Also on the horizon, we have an announcement for Crysis 4. Crytek announced they're going to be making a fourth Crysis. No release date, but seeing as how it was just a CGI trailer, we can expect 2023 or 2024 for a release date.
Yeah, probably be done in 6 years. And I mean, like this one, I think this might turn into a meme because there's no publisher attached to Crysis 4 at this time, which is interesting because the first 3 Crysis games were all published by EA. And EA apparently has nothing to do with Crysis 4, which I find kind of interesting. And this is... the Crysis games are really neat. They're sort of somewhere between a Far Cry style game, like a semi-open world-ish or like sandboxy shooter, but with some like super powered cyborg elements. So, but it's almost like they've said like, okay, let's do something like Halo where you're playing as a cyborg super soldier, but make it so that your control over your armor and what your armor can do is, I guess the best way to say it is kind of like grounded in a little bit more reality. So instead of having shields like in Halo that just automatically recharge, your suit's made of nanomachines that can perform different functions. So you can do things like activate an armor mode, and that armor mode makes you resistant to damage, not totally resistant, and it doesn't exactly recharge your shield. You can deactivate the armor, and then your battery power, like essentially your power, recharges, and then you can reactivate your shields if you want, or you can cloak like the Predator, like kind of go into like a stealth mode, or use it to sprint really fast or jump really high, but your power meter kind of mediates all of it. And I like Crysis. I played all three of them, and I thought they were all quite good. It sort of famously is the game that melts PCs, but I mean, now you can play the original Crysis on Nintendo Switch. So, like, yeah, I know it's maybe not the can it run Crysis that it used to be these days, but I find it interesting to see where they'll go with Crysis 4, because without a major publisher behind them, it might just be Crytek like self-publishing it. So I'm interested to see what happens with it. But again, far too early to get excited, though I like the possibility of a new Crysis game.
Yeah, the trilogy, everyone kind of knew this was coming along since they remastered the original trilogy. Not on Game Pass, though, but it is on Steam, so more than welcome to check out the original three in anticipation of the fourth. And then moving on, we had Nintendo Direct, held on February 9th. I know you're not the biggest Nintendo fan overall, but
I like Metroid.
And they talked about releasing a new difficulty for Metroid Dread. Nothing about Metroid
Two new
Prime
difficulties,
4.
technically. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really easy and really hard?
Yeah, it's like an easy mode and then a one-hit kill mode, or a one-hit death mode. So, I mean, realistically, a one-hit death mode, it's either like a meme difficulty. It's like, is anyone actually going to do this? Because realistically, if you were like streaming it, for example, you could just say, I'm just going to do like a no-hit run. And then if you do get hit, you can just reload your checkpoint. So that's a difficulty that you can pretty easily like self-impose that restriction on yourself. It's not like, oh, the enemies have new attack patterns, or there's, I don't know, different ways that you have to defeat these guys, or you have to match up a certain type of weapon to kill this thing, or only be able to kill things with parry attacks. And I just think there's more effort they could have put into that. Easy mode, sure, like, fine. I kind of like the fact that Nintendo had a big, like, super difficult game in the mix, and I actually don't even think the hard mode... Sorry, go ahead.
Metroid Dread wasn't about, like, the fighting aspect of it, the living and dying. It was more about the puzzles anyway, so I don't understand why they would really need an easy mode, but...
Well, I don't know. Some of the bosses in it are pretty tough. Like, most of the just standard enemies aren't so bad, but I could see people having trouble with the bosses. Even the final boss of the game took me a fair amount of time. And there is the like giant X parasite boss, that one's pretty tricky too. But at the same time, they're all very pattern based. Like, kind of speaking of Elden Ring, sort of like a Souls game where you can tell what the attacks you're dying to are. And it's kind of just a matter of figure out, okay, how do I avoid this attack? And then once you figure that out, it's like, okay, I'm never going to get hit by that attack again. Or if I do, it'll just be because I messed up. Like, I know why that happened, and I can do my best to correct it. And usually if you can correct enough of those, you can squeak through to a victory. But I was actually one of the Geeks and Gamer guys, Johnny, says that his dad was like a huge fan of the Metroid games, but he had trouble playing Metroid Dread just because like he's an older guy now. But so, like, I mean, the idea that there's like an easy mode for those people, I don't entirely hate that, because I think that there is, as you were kind of saying, like the thing with Metroid isn't necessarily the combat difficulty, even though I think Dread in particular is probably the one with the most difficult combat, or at least the most difficult bosses.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Ridley in Super Metroid is harder than any boss in Dread. I'm not sure. I don't know. I have recently played them all, but I never really was thinking about contrasting boss difficulty. That being said, I wish that the downloadable content for Metroid Dread was a little bit more substantial than, I don't know, we made a harder mode and a game journalist mode. So
yeah.
you're welcome. At least it's free. Like, I'll give them that. It's not like for $5 you can get an easy mode.
Yeah. No, but I assume they'll be releasing another mission or two in the future.
Maybe, but I mean, there's never been DLC for a Metroid game before, so who knows?
But has there ever been like Metroid in this DLC landscape? Like, when was the last Metroid made?
Metroid Prime 3, I suppose, unless you count Federation Force. And well, I guess on the Mercury Steam's previous one, though, was the remake of Metroid 2 that was on 3DS. But prior to that, I think Metroid Prime 3. Although I don't know if Metroid Prime 3 or Other M came out first or afterwards. Might be Other M, actually. But I don't know. It was a Nintendo Wii game either way.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
No Prime 4, so we'll keep waiting for that.
Not yet, although they did, the Retro Studios Twitter account just changed their banner to like a new image of like Samus. So that's the news. Again, I know, Metroid Prime 4. Great, good news, guys. There's another JPEG of it. But at the same time, it bothers me that I'm in the middle of like recording my Metroid video. I've got about half of it recorded, and there's all this like Nintendo news and Metroid news happening. I'm just like, guys, just let me finish this and release the video so I don't have to keep on changing things on the fly.
Speaking of DLC, but no next version coming out, Mario Kart 8 was discussed. $25 for 48 remastered courses. Gonna be released slowly by the end of 2023, like obviously tracks at a time. You play Mario Kart. Any enthusiasm about this?
No, not for me, not personally. I don't know that 50 cents a track is bad, but it also seems a little steep if they're all like, it's like they didn't actually have to make any new courses. It's just like, hey, here's 48 tracks from a bunch of our older games that we're just gonna pretty up a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, I mean that's fine, but that also seems like the kind of thing that for a game you're still selling at full price, even though it's been out for like 5 years. You could probably have just made that a free download to keep people interested. Yeah, I know Jeremy would probably be like, well, it's still at the top of the charts every month. I'd be like, yeah, well, that doesn't mean that it's good that they kind of fleece people on it. Like, I think that if you're a 10-year-old and you want to use your allowance money to buy Mario Kart, it would be nice if you didn't have to use 6 months worth. Like, that's all I'm saying. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's Nintendo. Nintendo's gonna be Nintendo.
In better news for me, they announced that Switch Sports and Mario Strikers are making their debut on Switch.
Oh, Mario! It's been 6 years. Is it a new Mario Strikers or is it the GameCube one?
I believe it's a new Mario Strikers.
Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't watch the Direct, so I'm mostly learning this from you right now.
Yeah, you definitely do not care about Nintendo at all.
Nah, not really.
But they made Dread.
Yeah, they made one game I've liked in the last like 6 years. I like Breath of the Wild too, but I think Breath of the Wild runs like crap on Switch. I think it runs better on PC, but they don't officially release the PC version.
It just says Mario Strikers Battle League coming to Switch.
Oh, okay, like Battle League. I think that's it. Yeah, that would be a new one because I think the other one was just called Super Mario Strikers. But I heard they announced Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I didn't finish the first one, but I thought it was good, so maybe I'll get around to finishing that someday.
They did announce that as well. There was another few other games. There's Kirby's getting an update. Again, like, I'm not really big into Nintendo too. The other big news wasn't even at the Direct. They obviously lay low with this, but they're set to close the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShops on March 2023. Sorry. Currently, there's over 400 games on both shops combined. The most important thing is you can lose access to your Pokemon from earlier versions because the only way to save them on your 3DS was in the Pokemon Bank, but now they use Pokemon Home to store old catches. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even realize that was the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, X-Ray-Girl's the Pokemon player in the family, but I think this meme says a lot. So it's the NPC face, and it says it's got Nintendo on its forehead. It's like, you can't pirate our games, that's stealing. And then the person in the next frame is like, then sell them to me. And the Nintendo face just does the angled eyebrows.
The angry eyebrows.
But yeah, but I mean, that's kind of my big complaint about this whole thing, because the biggest argument that I've seen against this being a bad thing is like, oh yeah, like you guys were buying a bunch of games on the 3DS store and Nintendo Wii store, like now it's a problem that they're closing it. I'm like, ordinarily, no, it wouldn't be, because ultimately you can't keep those servers up and running forever. You're gonna have to shut them down eventually. I understand that. The thing is, I have lines in the video that I'm recording that Nintendo is now screwing me on, because while saying like, yeah, I played an emulated version of this game, even though I own the original on whatever system it was on, because there's not really a good way for me to play this. However, if you do want to acquire one without going to the way of emulation, these games are still available on the Nintendo Wii U shop, or the 3DS shop. Now I'm like on the Metroid Prime 3 segment that I'm going to be recording maybe later tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to have to say like, yeah, actually Nintendo changed this thing. So remember earlier in this video when I told you could get Metroid Prime 1, 2 on the Wii U shop? Yeah, you can't do that anymore. And so now, like, honestly, this would not be a problem if Nintendo would just port all of their old games to Switch. Honestly, I would have no issue with them closing it at all, closing their shops at all. If it was just like, hey, any Game Boy Advance game that you remember being good, open the Nintendo eShop on your Switch, buy it for $5, download the 2 megabyte file that a Game Boy Advance game is, and run it on a Game Boy Advance emulator that they could probably get an intern who is at Nintendo right now to code in an afternoon. Yeah. Like, there's so many Game Boy Advance emulators out there that emulating one of those on a Switch should not be an issue at all. DS and 3DS, a little bit tricky, but there are some Nintendo Switch games that you can play in vertical mode, like Ikaragi. It's like a shooter, but anyways, if you put the two screens, one on top of the other, the Switch is a touch screen, so anything that you need stylus control for, you can just touch the screen. Boom, you're done. Or if you want to play it in sideways mode, you can just do what I was doing playing like Samus Returns on an emulator, which is you have most of your screen is the screen with the game on it, and then the additional screen is just off to the side. And if you're doing anything where you need that one to be big, you just hit F8 in there. And if it's like, oh, well, the Switch doesn't have an F8. You know what the Switch does have the 3DS didn't have? 2 extra shoulder buttons. So just tell you what, hit left bumper or ZR or whatever the hell they call it on Switch, and just have that switch your screen so the other one's big and the other one's small, and then you can switch back. And the touch screen's on the Switch, so you can use the stylus. So what I mean is, in 5 minutes, I told you a way that could easily work, and I have no experience making video games. I've just played a bunch of them, but the people at Nintendo are just like, yeah, no, we're gonna make it so that you can't buy it. Also, we're gonna have it so that Metroid Dread really picks up a lot of the plot points in Metroid Fusion. But if you want to play Metroid Fusion, fuck you. How about that? Yeah, like that. Currently, that's the deal. Like, it's just like, well, watch a Let's Play of it, buy it for $400 on eBay, or get it on the 3DS store this year, because if you wait until next March,
it's gone.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. It's just like, man, stop, Nintendo. Just sell your games.
Not until someone buys them, like our next story. The biggest probably news since our last podcast. Sony's purchasing Bungie. $3.6 billion. Obviously nothing compared to the Activision price, but it's still pretty good. They promise to remain independent and publish multi-platform games. We'll see how that goes in the future, but for now, that is the news. Sony gets experience in live service gaming, as well as movie and streaming rights to Destiny. And Bungie gets help producing more Destiny 2 DLC, as well as their new IP that's still unnamed, but they promise they're releasing a new IP soon. What were your thoughts on this?
I think it was a good move for Sony. I'm skeptical on how it's going to turn out for Bungie, because Bungie's kind of hilarious when it comes to like them being owned by people or like having ties to major companies, because their story was, okay, I think they mostly were working with Apple, and then Microsoft bought them when the Xbox was being developed, and that's how they got Halo as an exclusive, because Microsoft bought Bungie wholesale. It was just like they fully owned them. Made a bunch of Halo games. Microsoft wanted them to keep making Halo games. They're like, we'd really rather go off and do our own thing. And they're like, well, tell you what, we'll give you your independence, but we're keeping Halo. And they're like, okay. And then Bungie had like all these statements where it's like, we're happy to be braving this new territory on our own. We're going to be an independent studio. We're going to be calling all the shots. We partnered up with Activision for a 10-year deal where we're going to make our new game. And then Activision started calling a lot of the shots for Bungie, and Bungie was like, okay, we're leaving Activision. Good news, everybody. We're Bungie. We're an independent studio again. We're revving out on our own. It's going to be awesome. The future of Destiny is bright. Yeah, we're owned by Sony now. So it's like, guys, come on.
Yeah, like choose your lane.
Clearly, I think like their whole thing is they're too ambitious to self-fund and like just basically do everything on their own. They do kind of need a publisher to make the kind of games they want to make. I have no doubt that the people who work at Bungie are talented enough to make different types of games and self-publish them, but they don't want to make different types. They want to make Destiny and games like Destiny. They're a big, large scale, this is the only game you need to play kind of games. And I mean, both Fonz and I have played a hell of a lot of Destiny over the years. Yeah. Not really any recently, at least for me. Like I've not played Destiny in
not in over
years
a year.
At this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I have a lot of experience with the game. Like I understand Destiny. I understand what makes it great and why so many people love it. And it does seem like the kind of game that I could not imagine an indie studio doing it. Like that is kind of, it's almost ridiculous to even suggest. And that's kind of what Bungie tried to do for about a year. That being said, Sony, they have a lot of studios that make third-person, over-the-shoulder, cinematic action games with really, really nice cinematics and some stealth elements, semi-open world or open world, and they just have that game in a bunch of different flavors. So having a company that is arguably one of the best first-person shooter developers for AAA shooters, at least in existence, probably a pretty good move. And it's interesting that they're going to be making a new IP as well, too, because a lot of people, I was saying that I was actually really on board for this, too, because Insomniac's making Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank probably and Wolverine. So if Bungie was given Resistance, that would be too funny. Because Resistance and Killzone were both pitched as like Sony's Halo killers. So if we enter a world where Bungie is making a Killzone game or a Resistance game, I'm out. I'm going to Greenland. I can't live in this world anymore. That being said, though, I think Bungie makes great games, and I think that even Destiny being a weird one to get into is still a great game, and I look forward to see what they'll do for Sony. I like too that apparently they've said that they're going to continue to make games on multiple platforms. I don't know if that means PlayStation and mobile or PlayStation and Switch, but not Xbox, or PlayStation and PC. I hope they go with the PC releases, because Sony's games that have come out on PC have been by and large better than their console versions by quite a bit. So I kind of hope they continue that. And I mean, yeah, you could say that Horizon Zero Dawn launched with some bugs and glitches and stuff. And yeah, that's true. And they did take some time to iron it out. But at the same time, day one, Horizon on PC, I could play it at 60 FPS. And you couldn't do that on PS5 even until recently. Like they did eventually patch it, so now Horizon plays well on PS5, but PS4 Pro still locked at 30, and I would take an inconsistent 60 FPS over a consistent 30 FPS any day.
Do you think like a Destiny movie or a streaming show on Netflix would be good and or better than the Halo one that's about to come out?
I mean, Halo 1's not looking fantastic. Aside from the costumes look really good, but the premise of it, oh yeah. Oh, Cortana. Oh, I guess that I would almost not consider that, although her costume is all wrong. You're right. But yeah. I think that the choice, all the choices about how they were presenting Cortana were poorly done. Because I think like just do a CGI version of a younger Natasha McElhone, and that would have been fine. Like, 'cause she plays Halsey, so it's like, okay, let's like make her computer animated because she's a hologram. Like she is a computer animated AI, and even if she looks kind of shitty, that's okay because it's not like a computer animated character that's supposed to be a living thing. It's literally supposed to be a computer animated character. Hell, you could take her model from the games.
That's right. I don't understand. Like,
throw her
it's
in
right there. It's right there.
Yeah.
And you know
what?
Like,
I was by costumes though. Sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking about this. Like, overall now, like Halo 1, 2, and 3 and Reach, minus the ending for you, are great stories. But moving forward, Halo kind of dropped off significantly. Do you think the lore of Destiny is better than the lore of the overarching Halo?
Debatable. I think that they've done less with the Destiny lore, that they still have a lot. And also, I think one reason that you might have be in a better position with making a Destiny adaptation that could really be awesome is Destiny isn't anchored around one particular character the way Halo is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, granted, there's been lots of Halo stories that don't focus on Chief, but the cultural zeitgeist around Halo
is
Master Chief is at the bullseye of that. Like, he's the one that people recognize, even though I'm willing to bet tons of people don't even know that his name is John. Although I really think the meme of a lot of people thinking that his name is John Halo is great. Because it's like, yeah, no, you know, the guy in the green armor, John Halo. It's like, well, I mean, his name is John. But it's kind of like when people call Samus Metroid or Link Zelda.
Yeah, Link Zelda I think is the best one.
Yeah. What if Zelda was a girl and it's Link in like a gender swap version of Link? It's like, well, that's a girl version of Link, and Zelda is a girl, but that's not either. But, so I've always loved that meme. But yeah, I think that Halo, what they're doing to the Halo lore, I think is really going to backfire on them. I know they've said, oh, it's like the Silver timeline. So this is like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek that kind of doesn't exist in the same world. It's also Paramount making it. Paramount makes the current Star Trek shows, which I think are not good at all. So this might be the Star Trek Discovery of Halo. I think that Pablo Schreiber looks good in the armor, but like, I don't know. I don't know if the show is going to be good.
So
but I think Destiny that
would have.
I was going to say I think that
cinematic universe,
because Destiny has a lot of avenues that you can explore, and you can just create all new characters and set them in Destiny. And if you throw in the Speaker or Zavala or Akora Ray or Cade Six, even get Nathan Fillion to do his voice, like I know that he like left the game, but I think that he'd probably come back to do a like an actual movie or like a TV show, especially if it's just like, hey, here's a ton of money. But
do you get Peter Dinklage to do Ghost?
Only for season 1.
That'd be pretty amazing.
And then you get Nolan North to come. Oh God, I would die if they got Peter Dinklage to just be for one season as the meme, and then they don't address it. And on the Blu-ray, it's Nolan North on season 1.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
So you only get to see Peter Dinklage as the Ghost if you watched it while it was airing.
Yeah.
For those who aren't aware of what we're talking about, Peter Dinklage was the voice of your AI sidekick, like basically your Cortana that you have in Halo. Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones, like Tyrion, was the voice of it in the first year of Destiny. But then when they started doing the DLC, they realized that they'd have to keep paying Peter Dinklage to come back and record new lines, because that's the one character that you need to have constantly coming back, because it's your AI sidekick. It's your Cortana. It's the one that's always in your character's ear talking to you. How did they not
sign him to a multi-year deal?
I don't know, lack of foresight. Maybe
And
Activision
also,
was just like, yeah, no, don't worry, we got a guy for it, don't worry. And then they threw a bunch of money at Peter Dinklage, and then Bungie's just like, okay, let's get the cast back together. We're gonna do our first DLC. And then Activision's just like, oh, well, we can't afford to bring Dinklage back. Guy's about to do Game of Thrones season 8. It's gonna be huge.
I never played Destiny when it was first released, but I heard that his voice acting was very nothing to write home about. Like he did
not seem very interested. Yeah, he phoned it in some ways. There was always the famous line of that wizard came from the moon that he says as if like he's in a closet. He's just like, that wizard came from the moon. It's like, okay. That does sound really silly. A wizard is like a hive enemy. It's like the ranged class that they have. But in context, with Dinklage sounding like he wasn't interested at all in the line, made it come off a lot more dry than I'm sure it was intended. It was supposed to be kind of an epic, like, hey, guess where we're going next? Going to the moon. But it was more like, oh, yeah, that wizard's from the moon. But yeah, so... And then they recast him with the guy who does the voice of Nathan Drake. Speaking of which, though, Sony did just release their Uncharted movie that I've been hearing mixed things on. I have no interest in it personally. No, but it sounds like Nolan North is doing an impression of Guilty Spark. Like when he took over as Ghost. No, I don't think it is. But I mean, realistically, the Guilty Spark actor kind of sounds like he was doing a C-3PO impression. Hold on one sec. I'm going to look that up, actually. Guilty Spark voice actor. Yeah, Tim DeBotto, not Nolan North.
All right, then.
But yeah, Nolan North's the Nathan Drake guy.
Did you watch the movie yet?
No. I don't really have any interest in it, honestly. Tom Holland as Nathan Drake. Get out of here. I mean, there's people...
They have done too good of a job promoting him as like a late teenager that like now you can't see him as a 20-something-year-old. Like it's just he's a teenager.
He just doesn't look like. I think he's going to look like he's 17 for the rest of his life. He's like Michael J. Fox
or Tobey Maguire. Oddly enough,
although Toby now in his 40s, he's looking pretty distinguished. I think he looks like a man now.
Even in Spider-Man, he looked like he was like in his late 20s.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So,
but I mean, I don't know. I think, I guess that's true. Like when he was supposed to be playing 15-year-old Spider-Man, he looked like he was 26.
Yeah, he's just looked 26 that was for the 30 years now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think now he looks like he's, he
looks
in his mid-40s. Like,
hey, he doesn't look like he's in his 40s. Well, I guess they don't want him to make him look like he's in his 40s, but...
Well, I mean, like 40s. I mean, I'm almost 40. I'm going to be 38 in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, but we always know that like your actual age versus what they're trying to portray in movies and television are not always the same. Like Tom Cruise passes as a 40-year-old and he's like 60 now.
Oh, yeah, okay. Tom Cruise isn't human, Fonz.
Or Paul
Come
Rudd.
On.
Paul
Rudd. Paul Rudd, Tom Cruise, and Keanu Reeves are all vampires.
They are. They have to be.
That's why, like, honestly, Tom Cruise's physical appearance is probably the biggest argument for Scientology. It's like, look, I don't know what they're doing, but they're giving Tom Cruise the blood of the innocent or something.
Besides that, what have you been playing most of the time?
I think honestly, I think I've been spending the vast majority of my time on Sifu. I haven't really played a whole lot else. I fiddled around with Crysis a bit, but mostly because I figured I'd need to get footage for this episode. And Lost Ark, played around with Lost Ark a bit. Nothing really too much. Although I guess like was our last episode before I finished God of War on.
You were in the middle of it. You didn't
Give me the God of War difficulty.
You didn't finish it.
Yeah, so I finished Give Me the God of War difficulty, or Give Me God of War. Give me God of War. I think it's Give Me God of War.
Give Me God of War.
But because I remember on our last episode I was talking about whether or not I thought that difficulty level might be bullshit. It's not, but it's so close because every time you're fighting a bunch of enemies, you have to be so careful about backing yourself into if not a corner, then a place where there's not a lot of people coming from behind you, and you have to constantly be controlling the camera so that you can see everybody. That said, once you unlock some skills and get better gear becomes very important. I think that's probably what I didn't mention. Speaking of Destiny, actually, it's kind of funny.
I just unlocked the skill where you can take in projectiles and throw them back at people.
Yeah, that's a good one to have.
Yeah.
Good. But the big thing on Gimme God of War though is if the enemy you're fighting has a purple health bar, you might want to think about if you're tackling this mission at the right time, or if you should go get some better gear or upgrade things, because the looter aspects that I thought were not very important on the other difficulties. I think Give Me a Challenge is the one I had previously played it on, and Give Me a Balanced Experience, I think, is the normal mode. I forget what it's called, but it has kind of a weird name. They're always Give Me is the difficulty levels. But anyways, on Give Me the God of War, the loot game is very, very important, to the point that like I think I was in Alfheim when we last recorded. And that was it was honestly getting me close to the point that I was going to just stop playing and be like, okay, yeah, give me the God of War. I don't think it's designed well, or I don't have the chops for it, one or the other. But then I just changed what I was wearing. Like I changed the gear because I had some more powerful stuff in my inventory that I didn't realize. Not significantly more, by the way, slightly more powerful. And all of a sudden, all the dark elves I was fighting with the purple health bars turned into orange health bars. All of a sudden, I'm taking them out in a more reasonable pace. And when they do become elite enemies, like when they kind of glow blue for a minute, if I don't throw the axe at them in time, they just become a purple bar enemy. So instead of fighting 6 people with purple bars and 2 of them that are now super purple bars that are like next to impossible to kill, I'm fighting 6 people with orange health bars and 1 purple bar guy. And then it was a lot easier to deal with. Once I got the Blades of Chaos, it was like, okay, yeah, this game's basically over at this point, because now I have so many options in combat that I can actually do some damage. And funny enough, I think I recommended enough that I might actually try Give Me the God of War difficulty off the hop on Ragnarok. I don't know if that's me being too bold. But I enjoyed it. I started to really enjoy it towards the end.
It's pretty fun. It's definitely challenging for me. I've never played. First of all, I've never played it.
Oh yeah, give me a challenge is not easy. No. Like I would never have called God of War an easy game, even on that difficulty mode. But Give Me the God of War, I was debating whether or not it was like broken and silly, and I thought it was. It's not, but it's really close. It was almost broken and silly, but it eventually becomes quite satisfying when you learn how to properly manage the mechanics. Yeah, no. You know, a big thing in that one, the single step dodge. So, if you tap dodge twice, you do a roll. The one tap is just kind of a juke. I never used the juke on Give Me a Challenge because I thought it was kind of pointless. Here, it's actually very, very important. Like, you need to juke. Because those extra couple hits that you can get in on someone when you avoid one of their attacks versus rolling out of the way and needing to get back to them, extremely important.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. I just beat the first boss, and I think the Soul Killer, one of the elementals, pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
Looking forward to beating the rest of it. I just wish they took from Dead Space the immersion aspect of it. Like, instead of having a map and all of your skills and just making you immersed into the map, because the map, the actual scenery is just so amazing. It sucks that it's parts of it are ruined by the HUD. Like, I don't know why everyone just doesn't copy Dead Space.
Going into menus.
Yeah. Dead Space just
Dead Space had it right. I think, though, that it was actually in the video that I made on God of War, I talked about this a lot, that what's interesting about the presentation of God of War is it's all done as if it's a long take, like a single shot.
Yeah.
And that's where the loot aspects of it kind of, they clash with that a lot. Because I'm like, well, if all the cinematics kind of make it so that it's it's following around Kratos' shoulder and then the camera pans out, and it's done as if it's all just a really beautiful long take, like the movie 1917 or some of the action scenes in Children of Men. And that, like, it's like, well, why do I constantly have to go into the menu and make sure that I'm wearing the right shoulder pads?
Yeah, they should have automatically
like if you remove that,
automatically upgraded your gear. Like as you pick it up, it automatically just slots in whatever's the most powerful. You drop whatever's not powerful, or you can hold on to it and just have like sell useless stuff at the sellers, and you can only upgrade your equipment and your skills at sellers. So like it stops everything at the same time, right? Instead of making you go into the pause
and the
menu.
trick. Dead Space, you have the monitors that come up, and the trick to doing that in a game where you don't have technology that you can excuse it with is if just like the dwarfs say they had like a scroll and then you look at it and it's like on paper, and you can maybe even see Kratos's hand in the frame being like, upgrade this one, and like that, and that would be how I would have done that to like retain the
cinematic
presentation,
the cinematics of it, right? Like you said, like it looks like it's one long shot, except when you press pause, and then
although playing on the difficulty that I just finished it on, I did get a bit more of an appreciation as to why the gear system was there, because it seems like the gear system was built for that mode specifically. Because again, like I was playing on Give Me a Challenge, I did still try to keep my gear relatively powerful, but there was a lot of decisions I would make where I didn't care if I looked, or like I cared more about how cool I looked than the gear that I was wearing. Yeah. Whereas in Give Me God of War difficulty, I didn't have that luxury. Yeah. It was like, no, I need to be wearing the best stuff. Like I gotta go Monster Hunter with this. I can't go Destiny where I can just like make myself look cool and it's fine. And not Destiny while you're raiding. While you're raiding or doing like Trials of Osiris, that's a bit of a different story.
No,
I mean, like if you're just like
you need the right gear.
If you're palling around with your friends.
I think that's it for today. You have any last remarks for the team?
No, I guess just an update. I think I've mentioned it a couple times here, but I'm making some progress through the Metroid video. At time of this recording, I've got half an hour of it, which is 14 pages of 46, fully edited, like video editing and everything, and then an additional 2 segments recorded. This weekend, I'm going to try to knock out all of the recording if I can, or I might dive in and try to do the editing on the segments for the Prime games. But the segments that are edited already are Metroid 1, Metroid 2, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Zero Mission. So I got all the 2D Metroid stuff, like traditional 2D stuff. That's official because AM2R is also 2D, but man, that stuff's done though. And and then I'm going to probably get delayed and not have the video done until mid-March because Elden Ring's coming out next week.
Yeah, next week. Elden Ring. I look forward to it because I actually do like enjoy your videos. I had to go back and watch the God of War one, realizing I already did watch it, but it was really fun to watch again. I stopped it when you started talking about the story.
Before,
I stopped it when you started talking about the story. I usually do. I like going in blind. So yeah, looking forward to your Metroid videos. As well as even when it comes to video editing, it's not be good.
It's get good, scrubs.